You want to see something cool?
Yeah.
Undisputed king of the battlefield. Through the 20th century, they had been key to modern mobile warfare, the deciding factor in many of history's greatest battles. The tank's journey began almost a century ago, during the desperate fighting of World War I.
In 1916, the Great War is a stalemate. We've got trench warfare. There's a line of trenches with the British and the French on one side, then the Germans on the other.
The result? A 430-mile network of trenches, barbed wire, and machine guns, cutting a deadly swath through Belgium and France. This is the Western Front.
But the technology of 1916 is based on infantry, which are vulnerable to machine guns, and of course always held up by trenches and by barbed wire. So even at the very beginning of the war, people are aware that there must be a way of overcoming barbed wire, trenches, machine guns.
The British believe the solution can be found in tracked vehicles. But the idea of a mobile weapon on the battlefield has been around for ages. From Hannibal's war elephants to the drawings of Leonardo da Vinci, and right up to the science fiction ironclads of H.G. Wells. The British launch a top-secret weapons program, calling it the Tank Project, to trick German spies into believing they're water carriers. The reality is lethally different. These are mobile killing machines.
What makes the tank so important in the First World War is that for the very first time, you get the combination of thin armor plate, a power source, and the technology of the
first tank to hit the battlefield, the Mark I. Its first engagement wasn't a resounding success, but it showed its potential. The real game changer was this: the Mark IV. In to the Mark IV tank. I mean, this was the real workhorse of the middle years of the First World War. It bristling with armament. You got the 6-pound gun here. You got this would have been a Lewis gun or a light machine gun here, and then you enter the main body of the tank. Quite tight for space. There would have been 8 people in here, 8 crew required. 4 of them just required to drive the thing. Right in the middle, dominating the whole space, is the engine. There we go. It's an old pre-war tractor engine. As you can see, there's no partition here between the engine compartment and the crew compartment, and that meant that people had huge problems. The crews often had to be hospitalised after a day or two in the tank. They'd become asphyxiated by the fumes coming off this engine. Also incredibly hot. These exhaust pipes here would have been glowing red hot, and with all the bodies in here as well, it would have been absolutely baking.
A handful of tanks breach no man's land and bear down on the German front line, where hundreds of defenders are shocked to see the approaching metal monster.
In 1916, the Germans had basically no idea that the tank was in development. The first thing they realized was the sound, because tanks are loud.
One stared and stared and stared, as if one had lost the power of one's limbs. The big monsters approached us slowly, but always advancing. Someone shouted, "The devil is coming!"
they started firing too, with machine guns and rifles. Both didn't do any good.
Damn, this fire-spitting thing crosses over shell holes and is coming steadily and surely towards us.
The fear of being overrode. It's a very deep fear. Everybody has been squashed in the ground. So the German soldiers developed something, it's called in German Panzerangst, that's tank fear.
Now a hail of machine gun bullets passes over us. Out, out, out! Monsters are coming!
We were advancing. The tank was on top of the trench, and there we paused. Whilst the thickest guns raked the enemy to port and starboard. Then on we went again.
Now this was the vehicle that played its part in the titanic British victories of the summer and autumn of 1918. It spearheaded British attacks like the one at the Battle of Amiens on August the 8th, which saw British and Allied infantry advance further into German lines than any other battle on the Western Front in World War I. These Mark V's were faster, more reliable than the Mark IVs. They were also able to be steered by one person, unlike the 4 people required to steer this tank's predecessor. Britain's massive industrial base and innovative culture was producing tanks which every year were becoming better and better by orders of magnitude. In less than 3 years, tanks had gone from the drawing board to becoming integral to Allied war plans. They were no longer just a novelty, but another part of the machinery of war, one that was critical to the final Allied victory.